Welcome to the Local Domination Podcast, your ultimate guide to get local clients fast. Featuring interviews with local marketing and lead generation experts who will show you exactly how to attract local clients and dominate your market. And now, here's your host, Doran Aldana.
Get this. Every day, local prospects are searching for your products or services online, and they're looking for someone they can trust. Are you capturing that business? How would you like to dominate the local search results with more 5-star rave reviews than any of your competitors so you become the only logical, trusted choice? I call it Operation Domination. Download a free copy of our Ultimate Testimonial Toolkit now at mytestimonialengine.com/domination. Again, that's mytestimonialengine.com/domination and discover how to build your business at the speed of trust. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Local Domination Podcast, your ultimate guide to getting local clients fast. I'm your host, Doran Aldana, and we've got another killer episode for you today. Today, we have a special guest expert on with us by the name of Brett Farr. How's that for a far-out name? I know he's probably heard that far too many times. I keep using it, and I don't mean to be using it as often as I can, but I'll tell you what, it's just such a far-out name, I can't help it. But Brett Farr is the founder of Blick Digital. He's a digital marketing strategist and expert. He really specializes in automating marketing for his clients. So it's set it and forget it, a drip on your respective constituents with the right message at the right time and having it be uber relevant for maximum response. So I thought that even though this might be a little bit more tech involved than what the average local business owner would think about or consider, I think it's absolutely relevant that you guys hear about this, because when it comes to building a business that sets you free, you need to find a way to automate and systematize your business. You don't want to be the chief cook and bottle washer wearing all the hats and having a business that enslaves you. You want to have a business that sets you free, not just have a glorified job trading time for money. And a big piece of that, of course, is automation. And I'm a big fan of automation. Anything I can systematize, I will do it. It's a beautiful thing now in this 21st century with all the technology and the tools and the systems that we have at our disposal for dirt cheap. It is absolutely mission critical as a local business owner that you start putting some of these systems in place. So I figured it would be very timely to bring on Brett and to talk about this. So Brett, welcome to the call, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, Doran, awesome to be here. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. Well, let's jump into it. Why don't we just first off talk about the importance of, let's get into your story. Share a little bit about your background, your journey. How did you get to be an expert in digital marketing and automation?
So I just kind of going back a couple of years, I went to school kind of officially, got a degree in marketing. And I thought I'd learned what I needed to learn there in school, and turns out I didn't really know anything. I didn't learn hardly anything as it relates to small business marketing.
Isn't that how it goes, hey?
Yeah.
School is never out for the pro.
So anyway, as I was going to school, though, I had a job working in a marketing department for a small to medium-sized business. And, I just found like all these new ways of doing marketing, things that were like changing online, and were completely different from what I was learning in the classroom. But I had a lot of hands-on experience, and it was really cool to kind of get those two perspectives. Well, one of the responsibilities I had at that business was doing they're pretty cutting edge. They were doing a lot of this marketing automation. And for those that don't really know what that is, essentially that's allowing you, kind of like in your intro, just systematizing the process and allowing marketing to flow in an automated way. For example, someone comes to your website, they might request some information, and then you've got a series of follow-up touch points that happen in the same way every time, so it's consistent, nothing's falling through the cracks. So anyway, I kind of got on board with that, moved to a business that specializes in that, specifically Infusionsoft. If you haven't heard of that, really it's a software that is built specifically for automating marketing. And so I joined there, worked for them for a few years, and I kind of got in a consulting role. And they sent me to this one client that had purchased the software, and this guy was meeting with prospects on the phone for hours and hours every day. And so what we did, we took his process, we kind of scaled everything back, started from scratch, and then we started taking the conversations he was having over and over, and we'd systematize them, and we would put them into videos and follow-up emails and follow-up tasks for him to reach out at certain points, and cut down the time that he was on the phone with prospects by more than half. And so what ended up happening from there is like, man, this stuff actually works, you know. Up until then, I kind of had an idea that it was obviously helping clients, but at that point, it really like sunk in. I was like, you know, this is actually pretty cool stuff. And kind of with my thinking I was all great and stuff with my marketing degree, I decided to head off on my own and try it out. And anyway, since then, it's been 3-4 years since then, and Blick Digital was born, and here we are. That's what we specialize in today.
Very cool. Well, I always find it interesting that at the genesis of every successful business, what it really boils down to is value being delivered. Some problem or pain that's being solved in a meaningful and hopefully expedient and effective way. And you're no different. You know, you just started getting in the game and getting in the trenches and using what you had with what you could do at the time, your knowledge, your experience, your skill, brought it to the table, and it started to make a difference in your clients' lives. And obviously that was the beginning of a business that continues to grow. So for clients who are listening, for our audience that primarily are locally based businesses who want to grow, who want to expand, and a lot of times they might have success, but it's the kind of success that the more successful they are, the more stress they have, the less sleep they have, the less peace of mind they have, the less joy they have. Or on the flip side, you know, things dry up because they get sucked into the vortex of operations, and so it's busy for a time, and then they drop all the marketing balls, and they get stuck in the kitchen stirring pots all day as a technician, wearing all the hats, you know, chief cook and bottle washer. And then as they drop those marketing balls, of course, after 30, 60, 90 days of that, if not less, the pipeline starts to dry up. And so they're stuck in this feast or famine, up and down yo-yo roller coaster ride. And they seem to never quite escape. It's just up and down, up and down, up and down. Or it's the relatively neophyte business owner who's just trying to get momentum, just trying to get some traction. So we got a lot of different people in different seasons of their business and career listening to this. But one thing I know to be certain, what you just talked about there, that when you're in the process of engaging prospective clients and taking a prospect and converting it to a client, and then taking that client and converting them into an evangelist who refers and does repeat patronage, there's a process, there are touch points, there are communications, there are messages. And a lot of times what ends up happening is people just end up doing all that crap each time, again and again, repetitively, from scratch, without any systematization or automation, or I don't even know if that's a word, but I'll call it. I'll call it door and ease for now. That covers all the bases. So where does someone start? Let's say someone's in one of those three categories and they're wanting to be more efficient and streamline things, but they don't really know where to start. They just see it as one big rat's nest hairball. Where do they start?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I want to answer that. But before we go into that, let me kind of just share a couple of things that like just objections I get quite a bit from people that are like hearing what you just said and are like, automation sounds great, but I don't think that's going to work in my business, because I get that quite a bit.
Right.
And so just there's a couple of things. So number one, people say automation will essentially remove me from my business. You're like, well, I don't know if I really like that. Like, I won't be able to send all the emails that I want to and customize them the way that I really need to fit each and every prospect, or, you know, different things that they just come back and say, well, I just don't want it to remove me from my business.
Or here's one. I hate canned emails, or I hate the cookie cutter crap that goes out that isn't personalized.
Exactly. So my response to that is, and you kind of mentioned some E-Myth type Michael Gerber stuff already on this call, so I'm sure you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Really, when it comes to time to like systematizing your business, like there's nothing more, I don't know if intimate is the right word, but as like close to your business as you can get, as literally like sitting down and thinking about a process. And as it relates to your prospects specifically, like what is the designed process you want them to go through? And really that doesn't take you out of the business. If anything, that really puts you in the business and forces you to come up with a way that makes sense for your prospects. So that's typically the first one I get. So it'll remove it from a business. Second one is that automation is impersonal, which is exactly what you were just talking about. And the way so there's this definition of marketing automation that I really like, and it's called scaling personal attention. And so using automation, you can actually get, if you do it right, more personal with your prospects. And I want to talk about this a little bit later, but essentially, if you can automate all the objections, all the pain points, if you essentially know where your prospect is coming from, because chances are that 80% have the same 20% of objections or pain points. So you can kind of do some 80-20 there and build processes and automation around those pieces, and then based on who they are, serve up an automation that works directly for them and their pain point or wherever that prospect is in their buyer journey. So that's another one I get all the time. It's just impersonal. Like it's not really going to work. So and then the final one, you touched on this as well, is that they just say, I need more leads. If I had more leads, business would be fine. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that's probably true in some ways. If you could get more leads, obviously easier to close more leads. But I would kind of come back and kind of turn that around and say, I think what you maybe need more than leads is a better system to convert those leads. Because most businesses I speak with have some sort of database, whether it's in their inbox or an Excel spreadsheet or somewhere. They've got a database of leads, but they're not really doing anything with them. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I kind of turn that on its head and say, well, let's talk about the leads you already have. What can we do to help them become clients or customers?
So in other words, before they just go with the knee-jerk reaction of going out there and hunting for more leads, perhaps they should look at their own marketing bucket with the big gaping holes at the bottom of it and hem those up before they pour more leads into the bucket. Is that the idea?
Correct. So if I'm out there spending $1,000, $2,000 on an SEO firm every month, and I'm getting all this traffic, but they don't convert, they don't become leads, they don't pick up the phone and make a phone, like I'm essentially wasting quite a bit of money. And so I would argue it's a lot less expensive to create a better conversion process than it is to create more awareness about your business.
Yeah.
And so definitely something worth exploring.
I wholeheartedly agree. I've often said it's much better to pluck the low-hanging fruit off the tree than to go grab the 24-foot ladder, drag it out, risk breaking your back just dragging it out, and then you climb up to the top of that thing and risk your life dangling from the top of this thing trying to pick the high-hanging fruit that, by the way, is a much more anemic, less sweet, less juicy than the big plump fruit that you can grab from the bottom branches without even needing a ladder. It's kind of like, stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. It just doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Now, I will say to that, there's a slight caveat, which is kind of what we were talking about before, where everything that I'm talking about with automation requires heavy lifting up front, like a lot of heavy lifting, which means, like I mentioned, you got to sit down and really think about your sales process or your lead generation process, whatever your marketing is. You got to identify the different systems and you got to commit to them, and then you got to systematize it and then create the technology around it to make it actually happen. So I think that's where a lot of people kind of balk at it, is they say, like, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't want to put in the effort, or I'm afraid to put in the effort because, what if I change my business model? What if I change who I go after, whatever? Then I got to rebuild all this stuff. And it's just easier to go say, you know what, you're an SEO firm or you're a PPC firm or whatever, go get me more leads. And and I just don't think that that's always the right answer for every business.
Especially if they're an established business with a sizable database of past clients or customers, prospects, which would be unconverted leads.
Yeah.
As well as, potential or active referral partners. If you got that database and you're not doing much with it, or what you are doing is lame, dull, dry, boring, cookie cutter crap you're sending out that puts people to sleep, well, then there's the opportunity right there. So let's talk about that. I'm assuming if someone does have a sizable database and they know they're not doing much with it, that the lowest hanging fruit, the shortest path to the cash, and the area they want to look at first in terms of automation, the way you're talking about it, which is relevant and personalized automation that resonates with your audience as opposed to repels them, is to look at the assets you already have, such as your own database and the existing funnel that you're already driving traffic through. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So where I start, though, is I think a lot of small businesses they show up and they market their product, and that's not a bad thing, and that makes sense initially. But I think the issue with that route is you're not speaking to the prospect. Really, you're speaking all about yourself, and that's kind of marketing 101. So that's where I think like what you're talking about with just the more personalized approach. Here's a quick example of the way that we would go about this. So step one is in any marketing should be to identify who you sell to. That's pretty typical. Like, who's your avatar? Who's it you're going after? And then generally, let's segment that group because it's usually not identified enough. So a good example here is we're working right now with a business that sells baseball coaching products online. So these are videos you can watch, practice templates you can download, things like that you can get online and buy. And what we identified was that, at first what they were doing is they're marketing that they had all these products available and you could go buy them. The reality is, once we started doing some surveying and segmenting, we realized that they really had three main buckets. One was like youth, 4 to 8 and under. They were just like the mom and dad, or the dad that was like, yeah, my son's playing. I've never really played, but I played Little League, I guess. I'll coach. So we had that group. And obviously we're going to speak to them way different than we're going to speak to the guy that's coaching high school. And again, we're going to speak way different to the guy that's actually doing like club ball. He's out there traveling with his team, going to different states. So we identified based off the surveys that we had these three main groups. And instead of now marketing the products that we had available, now what we were saying is, all right, well, when they come into our marketing world, we'll begin asking them who they are. And if they are like a 4 to 8 and under person, they really don't need this massive product. Like, we're not even going to let them know that that's available, because it's just going to overwhelm them. They're just the dad that wants to help, his kid's baseball team. So we built in the marketing world, it's called a funnel, but really if you kind of think about a typical funnel, like in cooking or whatever, it's just you pour some leads in the top and leads come, sales come out of the bottom. So we built a funnel specifically for that group, as well as the high school, as well as the clubs. And really everyone spoke to that audience a little bit differently, and sold a different product at the end of it all. And so that's a way that you can take your, what you sell and use automation instead of like getting on the phone with all these people and seeing like who they are and where they're at and then trying to accommodate. We're just filtering them up front and having them tell us who they are, so that we can then turn around and say, all right, well, we've got the perfect solution for you. And that's we do that quite a bit with a lot of clients. That one came to mind. We just set that up here about a week or two ago.
That's really smart. Really smart. I think Dan Kennedy, the world-renowned marketing guru, he calls it being a meaningful specific instead of a vague generality, by having an effective and resonating market to message media match. So you're sending the right message to the right market using the right media. And instead of just having a broad stroke approach with all of those types of clients, thinking, hey, they're all the same type of client. You're going deeper and you say, well, there's actually sub niches within that niche, and each one of them needs to be spoken to differently. Mm-hmm. And when you dial in the message for each one of those sub niches, speaking to their hot buttons, their pain points, their challenges, what keeps them up at night, and reading their mail as if you're in their shoes and having the right jargon so they get that you get them, that's when you can really supercharge the response rates. Yeah.
Another great example, maybe more like local based, because that was pretty, I think, technical based off of our original conversation, is, let's say you're a chiropractor and you are selling,
neck snapping.
Yeah, exactly.
Snapping necks, cashing checks.
maybe their pain point is actually not even it's in their neck. Maybe it's in their knee or lower back or whatever.
Sure.
If you could kind of find out where they're at, I mean, it's at that point so much easier to begin the follow up. And so, as it relates to this marketing automation stuff, generally what that is a series of emails, text messages, if possible. Advertisements on Facebook or YouTube or whatever it might be. But the main thing, and this is kind of what I think maybe sets us apart from a lot of our competitors, is that we really focus in on getting that pain point first at the front end of all of our marketing conversations. So we really encourage our clients to go out and identify what those main buckets are. And generally that's a pain point. And with the chiropractor, it's literally where's your pain, right? But with this baseball example, that wasn't necessarily a pain point. That was just kind of what their three buckets were. So kind of depends on the type of business, but it does take a little bit of maybe even surveying who you work with right now to find that out. But once you have that dialed in, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to commit to it for the next 10 years. I've had lots of businesses change from time to time, and that's totally fine. But I think the main thing is identifying what those are, and then doing a really good job to set up systems for each of those pain points. And normally I say don't do any more than 3, otherwise you'll overwhelm yourself. So that's a great piece of advice that a lot of our clients have had really good success with.
Yeah, another thing that I think is often overlooked is, sure, you can serve 2 or 3 or 4 different niches, but the question is, does it make sense treating them all with the same amount of energy, time, and capital output? Does it make sense even giving 1 or 2 of them any of your effort or time or energy or bandwidth, considering that maybe 1 or 2 are just that much more profitable? For example, in my other company that serves mortgage professionals, I used to serve everyone else, pretty much everyone the same. So people would just self-congregate based on their level of desire to move their business forward, but I didn't really have subsets or a specific avatar, as you call it. And what really created a massive breakthrough for that company is identifying the people who don't necessarily need it but want it. So what I mean by that is identified the people that I could help the most were the people who did 100 G's plus per year, had a database of 100 plus clients, and they were already doing relatively well compared to the mediocre majority. So they didn't necessarily need it, but they wanted it because they're hungry for more and they're wanting to take their business to the next level, and they know that they could do way better if they were monetizing their database at a higher level. And so my niche became very, very narrow, very specific. And when we started to offer high-level services to those particular types of clients, and only those types of clients, our business basically doubled almost overnight, like within a span of about 4 months.
Wow.
So I think that really speaks to what you're talking about, is getting really clear on who your niche is, and then you speak their language and really address their unique problems and offer a viable solution. And ideally it would be uber profitable and a bigger ticket item, because at the end of the day you want to make money. And then obviously that's a game changer. So the way I see it, there's kind of 2 different ways to look at this. There's the external marketing and internal marketing. Internal marketing would be the database marketing and leveraging the assets you already have. And external would be outbound, consumer direct, pay-per-click, postcards, telemarketing, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start with inbound. Let's talk about internal, because I think that's where the lowest hanging fruit is for most business owners, that is often undercapitalized and overlooked. So if someone wanted to start maximizing their response from the messages they're sending out to their own database, and they don't really have their database segregated into different sub niches yet, how do they go about doing it? What's the easiest way to start to segregate out their database so they can start to launch more relevant messaging?
Yeah, for super small businesses, I think segmentation, well, for any business, segmentation is key. And you'd kind of touched on that, like even as simple as this person's a referral partner, this person's a prospect, this person's a customer. Like it can be like that simple. And so for super small businesses, I think a lot of them could probably just go through their database and just do it themselves and say, all right, I'm going to make a couple of buckets here and, essentially just tag them as either a prospect or customer, whoever. I think what you're getting at, though, is just a little bit deeper, where it's like, how do we find out, like in my example, their pain points, or how do we start learning a little bit more about them? And I think, we do a lot with email marketing. Email marketing is, I think, really helpful for something like this. Obviously, this would be really difficult to do with like a postcard campaign or something like that. So with email marketing, in fact, we're going through this process right now with one of our clients. Is we've identified those main buckets after doing some surveying and things like that. But then we're offering some incentives to then have them, and with email marketing tools that we use, all that person has to do is click a link. And so what we'll do is we've got a series of emails being sent out, and we're offering an incentive for them. In this case, a free offer that's normally $500. We're going to add them to a drawing that all they have to do is click on one of these. In this case, we did 5, not 3, but that was client's choice. One of these 5 links, and that allows us then to have the software auto tag them as to who they are. And it's a great starting point. Back to your point about profitable, non-profitable. What we found is that some of those groups that they've been spending quite a bit of time on just were a tiny segment of their market, and were also the least profitable. And so they don't want to kind of chop it off quite yet, but that's probably coming soon as they dial in their products and messaging more for their core audience. My guess is they'll take that audience that isn't really profitable and isn't even really a big part of their database, and just chop them off and just say, that's not really what we focus in on anymore. So anyway, as kind of like tactical advice, that's really something that we do all the time with clients, is a segmentation campaign.
That is a great idea. So in other words, dangle a carrot, so there's a self-serving reason for them to do the click, because let's face it, people for the most part are lazy bastards, and they're not going to do it unless we incentivize them. Everyone's tuned into the same station, WIIFM, what's in it for me. Yep. So you say basically, hey, enter to get a chance to win X. All you need to do is click one of the following links below that resonates or is in sync with your situation, or with whatever category you fall into. Click below, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
And the formula could almost be, what is your biggest challenge regarding X? Like, that's kind of where we start. Sometimes, again, it doesn't always make sense, depending on the market and your products and all that. But a lot of times it can be like, what's your biggest challenge with this, or what's your biggest pain point, or however you identify it, and that'll get you your starting point. And if you can kind of identify those, and essentially what they're telling you back is like, here's how to sell to me. Again, chiropractor, my biggest issue is my lower back. Well, moving on, you're probably not going to receive a whole lot of information about neck or any of these other things. It's really going to be about your lower back, and that's how I'm going to sell to you.
Interesting. And then, of course, you got a couple options beyond that. One is to send them to a survey if you still want more data when they click, which gets you even more granular insight as to their challenges, their pain points, their aspirations, their goals, what the data you want to learn from them to be able to address their needs. Or I guess you could probably set it up so that another email goes out as a follow-up after that tag that gets added to their profile that says, hey, thanks for entering in to win and for letting me know that you're interested in X. There's a few different areas that we can address inside of that category. Which one is most important to you? Click the link below that is most interested. So we can have follow-up emails, sub-segregating them even more, couldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably talking like super hyper-targeted type stuff that my guess is a lot of small business owners would be like, oh my gosh, where do I even begin with that?
That's probably a little too granular for the average.
So, but where you're getting at is exactly right, and it's kind of the whole theme of this, which is sell to them and their pain points. Don't sell your products, sell to your prospects, and that's really what it comes down to.
What would you say is the best software for the average local business owner that has the functionality that does the stuff you're talking about in terms of tagging and segregating and being able to build campaigns that allow us to do all this stuff?
The one for small businesses, the one that I really like is a software called Active Campaign, and you can get started fairly inexpensively. Most small businesses will have a Constant Contact or a MailChimp anyway, I found. And really what Active Campaign can do is just remove one of those off the table, because Active Campaign can do your basic broadcasting, but it also has the ability to do a lot of this automation that we were talking about early on. And so for smaller businesses, local businesses, that's one that I really recommend. Once you start getting a little more, you want to get in and dive in a little bit more and have a little bit more functionality and things like that. We do a lot of servicing for the company I mentioned earlier, which is called Infusionsoft, and they kind of take it to the next level. But either one of those are tools that we use, and we recommend them both.
Yeah, I have Infusionsoft for both of my companies, and it's wicked awesome. But you're right, it's a little advanced for the novice. It's a bit like hitting a finishing nail with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
If you're a relatively novice marketer and you're just getting started, it's probably going to overwhelm you. But man, is it powerful once you dig in. So in terms of external, so we've talked about the internal marketing in terms of segregation of the database using email. I imagine you could use any number of different communication methods, but email is probably the easiest way. What about external marketing? Let's say we're doing Facebook ads. How do we use this segregation method to be able to get a better ROI on our Facebook ads driving through a funnel? Tell us about how we do that.
Yeah, great question. So again, what we recommend is on the front end of any campaign, any funnel that you do, is you get whatever information you need to get from them. So sometimes it's just name and email, sometimes it's name, email, phone number. Whatever you end up getting from them, make sure you add one more field on there. And a lot of people will tell you, well, you add more fields, you had less conversion. I think it's well worth it. If you're capturing what their pain point is and you've got a system to follow up based on that, you're in a much, much better place and probably way ahead of your competition as it relates to marketing. So again, if you're doing a Facebook campaign, it could be as simple as like call our office, right? Like I know a lot of local businesses will just say, hey, here's a campaign. We don't even want to go to a landing page or anything. Just have them call our office. Well, as part of the, that script for your, the receptionist, whoever answers the phone, I would ask that question. But a lot of what we do is a lot of online business stuff. So a lot of times it's going to a landing page where we'll, ask them again what that biggest pain point is. But another segmentation tool is how they would like to get communicated with. Another great example of something that we just did recently was using Facebook lead ads, which if you're unfamiliar with that, that's just where you don't even go to a landing page. It just pops right in the Facebook application itself.
Yeah, that's new, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's fairly new, and Facebook already has their name and email address, right? They had to sign up somehow, so it's got their name and email address and sometimes even phone number. And so what we did is we set up a lead ad that says, and it has by default name, email, and phone number, and 90% of the time that phone number is filled because if Facebook needs it for security reasons, you've probably had to fill it out. And then we put one more question on there, which was, can we text this to you? And the offer was like a 20-minute video explaining about a certain concept. And what we found is about 80% of prospects are saying yes. Yeah, we can text it to me. And so what we would do is we'd segment those people out, and again, using automation, we'd fire off a text, and they'd see it, and we'd track whether or not they watched it, and then if they watched it again, we would automate some other stuff. But the main thing is not just segmenting who they were, but also the way that they, in this case, like to be communicated with. So again, segmentation is huge, and that's definitely one way you could use it with Facebook.
Oh, that's interesting. Very cool idea. So the way I see it, there's kind of a couple different ways to capture the data when they are opting in. For example, a drop-down menu of pain points. They choose the one that's most relevant to them.
Yep.
I imagine there, in some cases, would also be need for qualifying people based on credit or income or database size, or depending on the business, obviously.
Yep.
But then we risk, when we add too many of these questions, we risk significantly reducing and suppressing conversion. So how do we get that fine balance? Let's say, for example, I want to know what their pain point is, but I also want to know if they qualify for what I've got. Do I do both? Do I lead with one and then do the other later? How do you strategize that?
Yeah, I guess it really kind of depends. Like, start with the end in mind. Like, what are we trying to get out of this particular marketing campaign? And if it's to just get somebody on the phone, like if it's heavy sales, you got a sales team, like using your specific example, I would probably say, we could probably find out what their pain point is on the phone once we get them, but we don't even want to get on the phone if they don't qualify.
Right.
So in that case, I might smooth things around. Of course, all this really depends on the business and, market and all that, but using that specific example, just move things around a little bit, just kind of get a feel for, what your specific funnel might look like. But that's a great question. And that's the way that I would probably solve for that particular need. To build on that, though, I do agree with you. Normally, it just really depends on how qualified that person is. The traffic that you're driving to a specific marketing campaign, like an opt-in, are they already on your database, and do they already know who you are and know, like, and trust you? In that case, like, it's probably not too much to ask a question or two extra from them, because you already built the relationship. But if the context is, they've never heard of me and I'm just kind of doing like Facebook ads, for example, yeah, you don't want to ask for their social security number right off the bat, right? So anyway, kind of, I guess it really just depends. I guess not a great answer, but that's what it is.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So what would you say to someone who can do a lot of things for a lot of different people, and their biggest challenge is that they're the vague generality instead of the meaningful specific, and they're under this misconception that if I narrow down to a specific niche, I'm going to miss out on a lot of business because then I'm pigeonholing myself into one thing.
Yeah.
How would you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And my guess is any business, even if they're really broad like that, they could still narrow their market down some way. So you're talking about niche specific, and if they don't have like a specific niche or something they're after, I still think that they could talk to their customer. For example, maybe they can speak to, hey, do you need help with saving time or saving money, or kind of where they at with as it relates to their product, what their product is going to help them achieve. Mm-hmm. So it's really the whole purpose. You can always find some groups, and the whole purpose again is to take that data, use it to your advantage. And you'd mentioned early on, like if you did have something like that, you can watch those numbers, and if it's leaning heavily towards one specific thing, well, maybe you've kind of now decided that that's your niche, or whatever it might be. So that's definitely something worth considering. But I'm a firm believer that any business can segment the audience they have, no matter where they're at.
I absolutely agree. And most people, they don't track their numbers, they don't track their ROI. So these kind of ideas, if you're not tracking, although will still have a benefit in your business, will not have a measurable benefit because you're not measuring, and you can't improve that which you don't measure. Most people use what I call the SWAG method, scientific wild ass guess. They have no clue. So in conjunction with what you're a proponent of, which is segmenting, I would strongly suggest people track this stuff so they can split test or at least get some degree of discernment as to how much these types of segmentation strategies are actually making a difference in terms of conversion, return on investment, cost per acquisition, per client, etc. And even though that might be a little audacious for some of us who are tech tards and don't know how to track this stuff, I would just challenge you, find a way. With pay-per-click, it's easy. For the other stuff, it might be a little more challenging, but there's always a way if you're committed. So how can people reach out to you if they're hearing what you're talking about and they're like, man, I would just love to reach out to Brett and find out perhaps if he can help me deploy a campaign or start to systematize and automate my business? How can they reach out to you?
So the best place is probably just go to our website, Blick, B-L-I-C-K, digital.com. We've got, you can kind of see this in action if you'd like. You can go and request some information from our website and go through our own funnels. The other option, if you're more old school, you just want to chat with somebody, just shoot us an email at hello@blickdigital.com, and that'll come into our team, and we can reply back and get you set up with a conversation.
Awesome. Again, folks, that's blickdigital.com. Blickdigital.com. And you'll notice they have a marketing automation test drive. And my hunch is you go down that path, you're going to start to get segregated in the Blick database as to your challenges, your pain points, etc. So learn from the master himself by checking out that intake into his funnel. It's a pretty cool system.
Yeah.
Well, what would you like to leave our audience with, Brett, in terms of the one big idea you want them to marinate their minds on as we leave this episode today?
Oh, man. It's good. It's really just been the theme, I think, of today, which is sell to the prospect and don't sell your product. Essentially, find who your prospects are and create the relevant content and marketing for them, rather than just selling the features and benefits of what you offer.
Agreed, my man. Agreed. I'm reinvigorated and regalvanized to use this mindset, this approach, this strategy in my marketing. Yep. Kind of blow the dust off of it, clean the cobwebs off, and get reinvigorated to be diligent in applying high degree of relevancy in the marketing message by getting the data up front first. Plus, people like to feel like they're part of the process. It's not just same old for everybody, but there's a custom experience just for them. So I think it's best for us as marketers, but it's also best for the client experience. So it's definitely a win-win all the way around. So thank you for reminding us about that and for being a proponent of that and for leading by example in that. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Doris, nice to meet you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you as well. Well, that's all we have for now, my friends. Another episode completed. I hope you guys got value from our time together today. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Local Domination Podcast, your ultimate guide to getting local clients fast. So if tips galore that help you soar is what you adore, know this: we've got more in store. Remember, nothing happens without implementation. So in the meantime, in between time, go forth, engage. It's time for Operation Domination.